credibility in terms of how they put forward the complaint in the first place. So this letter serves for me to inform me about what happened. And I'm going to give you one or two cases where this lady, who is a hard-working woman, who describes the state as a little corrupt country. This was her experience, and we need to take that into account. Where she expected the law enforcers, the Gardaí, the DPP and the judges to protect and serve and to tell the truth. And then she goes on in correspondence to outline what happened to her and to her son, who was killed in a hit and run. So she outlines in this case about the person who was driving the car at the time and killed her son, that he was out on bail. His passport was in the Garda station. He was on a suspended sentence on both sides of the border. He was very well known to the PSNI and had served time in custody there. He was on a peace bond. He had 40 convictions, and he had 17 convictions outside of this jurisdiction. He was well known to Interpol. He was very well known to PSNI and had served in custody there. He was driving a completely defective vehicle on the night in question. He had no tax, he had no insurance, and he had no NCT on the vehicle. The man was on probation books 6 years for heroin before he killed on the roadside. And he had previous convictions in road traffic offences, burglary, aggravated burglary, handling stolen property, drugs, etc. 6 weeks after killing this woman's son, he received 2 sets of 2 weeks to run concurrently. And he was asked to sign at the Garda station in Carrickcross. But he was serving a sentence in another jurisdiction. He didn't sign in the Garda station. But nobody bothered to pick that up. In fact, some of the information in relation to that background was never presented at his case. Nothing. And in the end, and the reason why I'm giving that background, is that this lady, having lost her son that she cherished, a well-qualified young man setting out of life, just finished in university, a man who cared for the community, a man who worked with his neighbours and looked after them, he was lost to the country and to her. But this lady then decided that she was going to pursue the matter, because on one side the state had given this man that killed her son a senior counsel, a junior counsel, an interpreter and a solicitor. The state gave her and her family and her lost son a junior counsel. She complained at every hand's turn to the state that is there to protect her, and she was not listened to. But she would not give up on her son, and she eventually wrote to the Attorney General, she wrote to the DPP, she wrote to the Complaints Department of the DPP, and she wrote to the Ombudsman, the Garda Ombudsman. She made 19, I think, different complaints. I think 2 of them were just upheld. No justice was served in this case. So this lady turned to the authorities and asked for a public inquiry. She asked for all of the actions or non-actions taken by the state to be examined so that it would never happen again. And in her grief and trauma, her and her husband, having lost their son, turned to their daughter for support and assistance in lobbying the state that is supposed to protect her for an inquiry into what I consider to be a serious injustice. And Lucia O'Farrell, having lost her son Shane at 23 years of age, was refused. But she then turned to the only other people that could help her. She turned to the political system. And she asked the political system, please look at these papers. It's a file 1 foot thick, and it's full of inaccuracies. It's full of issues that have not served her or her family well. And she blew the whistle, if you like, on all of this, on the DPP's office, on the Ombudsman's office, on the Attorney General's office, and she asked for action. And I'm telling you, Minister, today, that that woman is sincere in her approach to this. She has a case that this state must answer. She has an absolute case for a public inquiry. And she turned, as I said, to her politicians. She wrote to Enda Kenny, and she said here, "I did not receive an acknowledgement." Now, this is a woman in absolute grief, traumatised by the loss of her son, appealing to the political system, and she got no answer. I saw the answers that she got from Minister Alan Shatter, and I have to say, it does not make me feel proud of this country and because of this issue. She got a cold acknowledgement. I challenge you, Minister Howlin, Minister Shatter, or the Taoiseach, to meet this woman and this family, to look at the paperwork, read it in detail, and see how justice was not served in this case, and to demand that there be a public inquiry. Not just in this House. I've made these appeals before, and you make them within this chamber here, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. And I'm asking you, I know that the chamber is empty, but there may be others looking in, and I respect that. But I'm sorry, Deputy, she appealed to the Taoiseach. She appealed, don't give me that rubbish. She appealed to the Taoiseach, don't give me that rubbish. She made a direct appeal to the Taoiseach and to the Minister. They should at least have acknowledged it. They should at least ask her to come in and put her case to them to see if she has a case, and then let her proceed with it. And I'm asking you now, as the one sponsoring this particular bill, that you would convey to the Taoiseach and to Minister Shatter how this woman was let down, that you should insist that they meet with her and that they decide on a course of action that will bring justice in this case. That is the least you should do. Now, I made an appeal before. In fact, I re-echoed that appeal last week in the case of Una Halliday and Foss, another whistleblower. And do you know what they're trying to do to her this week? Take her in for a further interview while she's out on sick leave. Do you condone that, Minister? Is that something that you would expect from an employer, the state, that they would not protect the rights of that woman? And I would ask here today that Solis or Foss or whoever is responsible there now, that they stop the persecution of this woman. She, like many others who blew the whistle, now go to their offices and are given no work, no telephone, no computer, humiliated every day they go in, shouted at before their other employees, ignored in terms of their rights. And when I raise it here, as I did last week at the Public Accounts Committee, nobody in this place listens, and nobody in this place responds. And that is no way for a state to behave. It just stubbornly sticks its head in the sand and ignores the rights of people. And that does not make me feel proud of this democratic system. And I appeal to you again, in that case, you were described as a Labour minister, going through the motions here in terms of this bill, and I respect you for it. But in terms of those two employees, that employee, make a direct intervention and ask for some respect. The woman is out sick, her family are deeply concerned. It's been raised publicly, it's been raised here in the Dáil, I'm doing it again today. And I ask whoever is listening, that is responsible, that they would leave this woman alone and that they would deal with it in a far more constructive way and not in the way that they are pursuing at present. And above all, that they would respond to this Parliament, and a request that has been made by a member of the Parliament to stop and treat her like a human being. I want to turn again to the state to inform you as to how I believe they should respond and how they're not responding. And I give you the case of the Special Investigations Unit in the Department of Agriculture. I appealed here to the Taoiseach following a statement made by Judge Reynolds that the Special Investigation Unit in the Department of Agriculture would in itself be investigated for the manner in which it's conducting its business and forcing down citizens of this state into a tormented state because of the way they're being treated. I cited a case of a young special needs child in County Carlow, in his home, terrorised by those that visited that house. Terrorised by them. He still speaks about it to his father to this day. And when that court case was heard in relation to the issue pertaining to his father, there was settlement. The Special Investigations Unit were not covered in glory following that case. And remember, all of the time in a different case, Judge Reynolds is saying that they should be investigated by the minister. In a case in Kilkenny, and I raised it here on the order of business one day in front of the Taoiseach, they bullied a pregnant woman who later gave up her job and who has not been replaced since because of the antics of those people involved in that unit. There are other cases, for example, John Fleury, where two detectives in that region have sufficient information that would be of interest to the state, and nobody has asked them for the information. Nobody has gone to them and said, what type of information do you have in relation to the Special Investigations Unit that would cause us to pursue them and to correct them in terms of the action that they take in various instances? I know that they have a job to do, but when they step beyond the line, the state has to stop them and protect the citizens of this country, which it is not doing. It is not doing. And there are umpteen cases where the Special Investigations Unit have gone beyond their remit, in my opinion, and should be reined in. There are cases that have been reported in the national media, in the Farmers' Journal and other places, and there is sufficient information to cause the state to at least ask a question, at least determine what they did with that young child, at least determine what information the detectives have in relation to other cases. And why is it, Minister, that nobody in this House responds? We're here debating this in Parliament. Do they not regard us as having any sort of a positive input? Or is it a case that it is the permanent government just continuing on their merry way and disregard the political system and disregard the complaints that are made to it? That is what seems to be going on here. And I have to say that there are issues outlined in that first case which lead me to believe that it's a complete cover-up of facts, a complete cover-up and disregard for the rights of that woman. And it is for that reason I make the appeal for a public inquiry. Now, there are many other cases then, some in the OPW, some in health, and in relation to the HSE in health, I have had nurses at the front line come to me and complain about the system. They have complained about how they are being treated. They have complained about how they are promoted or not promoted in some cases. And when I look at them, I see legitimate cause for concern. Now, they then are telling me these stories, they're telling me these complaints. They are afraid to tell their superiors. They are afraid to make a complaint. And some of them live in fear because an example has been set where others have lost their jobs. Is that the way the state should perform? Like, surely in a complaint to Minister Riley, or in a complaint to Minister Shatter or the Taoiseach, that the least any of them deserve is a formal response and a listening ear. And maybe thereafter, the political system might decide, well, we can't do anything for you, or we're actually going to change the legislation so that your voice can be heard, which is partly what you're doing today. But please, Minister, look back on the ones that have complained and look how their lives have been devastated. Look at the health that they are in now. Broken people, appealing to the state, out there probably having little or no respect now for the state or the democratic process, from a previous position of having the greatest respect for the state. We, the politicians, the democratic process, have visited that upon them because we refused to respond. And lastly, I'll make the point in relation to the Garda whistleblowers. Hasn't he revealed a lot of facts that have shocked people? Hasn't he been proved correct? He was poked at and made fun of. But it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that we discovered the Comptroller and Auditor General's report was based on the interviews with the very same man. And yet the political system wouldn't look after him or listen to him. They failed to protect their people. That's what the government did. Not this one and previous ones, I will admit. And I'm asking you to stop the process the way it's now operating, to at least deal with some of the cases, Minister Howland, that I have referred to at least ask someone to listen to them. And in the case of Lucia O'Farrell, I'm pleading with you to initiate a public inquiry into the death of her son, into how justice was administered in her case or not, and to deal with the aspect of the corrupt little country that she believes that we are.